Hey guys, this is Fergal from Poker VIP. We're back now again for part 3 of our 10NL Choral coaching series. So it's going to be following the same format as previously. We're going to be playing 4 regular tables. I'm going to be showing you how to dissect the game as the hands come up as each situation arises. We're not playing with any sort of HUD or anything like that, so we're just going to be playing, we're going to be building up reads as we go. And I'll show you how that can kind of progress as we go through the various sessions as well. So I've been playing just for a few minutes just while I was getting everything set up. We've won a decent pot over on the top left table so far. We got it in with ace queen of diamonds versus pocket sevens on a queen jack XX board with 2 diamonds as well. So we had top and we had the flush draw and he had a third pair. So that's the sort of standard that we are seeing frequently at these kinds of games. They seem to be fairly soft, so our general strategy is going to be maximize our value when we have it. We're going to be taking small stabs with bluffs and so on, but we're not going to be going off running any sort of elaborate 3-street multi-barrel bluffs in general, unless it's a particularly good run-in for us. So we're going to be sticking with that strategy. We're going to be playing reasonably tight, but also very aggressive, and hopefully we will be chipping up slowly but surely as the session goes on. So we're just going to jump straight into it. So 8-9 suited, easy open on the top right table here from the cutoff. We're not going to be happy if we get 3-bet, but in general, from what I've seen in these games, 3-betting isn't a huge part of it. So we're going to expect to see a decent number of flops with these kinds of speculative hands, or people will just be folding a lot pre-flop as well. That is, as I said, I haven't played a massive sample on these kinds of tables, but from what I gather, the general trend seems to be fairly fit or folds. So as I said, we're going to be opening as wide as we think we can get away with. We're going to be taking stabs on a lot of boards where we think our opponents can easily have missed, and then we're probably going to be giving up then if we get a lot of action then on later streets unless we have strong value. That's going to be our general plan of action. So as I said, hopefully it'll be successful. King 6 suited up on the top left table. We may consider defending here. Versus the blind versus blind, we're definitely going to be defending. It's just a case of whether we're going to defend it with a 3-bet or a call. We don't have to make any decision at all though, because we just take it down pre-flop, which is fine by me. If you can get a walk every single time you're in the big blind, then it would be essentially impossible to be a losing poker player. Pretty much the vast majority of the money that you lose comes from the big blind and the small blind. King Queen offsuit, we're almost certainly going to be playing this also. We're going to be bringing it in for a raise if it's folded around to us. It's a hand that we will consider using as a 3-bet if certainly if the button opens. I think if he opens, we're going to be using it as a 3-bet. We pick up an open-ender here on the bottom left table, so we're just going to call this min raise, I think, or maybe we want to raise. No, we're going to just go ahead and call. Raising wouldn't be absurd though. And we break off, we're just going to go ahead and fold. Pretty decent flop up on the top right table here at the pocket 9s. We're going to be starting off with a bet here for sure. No overcards, which is fun. It is a reasonably wet board though, so we're not going to be thinking of getting in any way trappy here. The third diamond hits, which I'm not thrilled about by any stretch. My villain here shouldn't have a massive amount of King X though, so I'm not overly concerned about the king. I'm more so concerned about the 4 diamonds on the board now. I think we're just going to be check giving up here. Fortunately, villain checks back and we take it down, which is absolutely fine by me. So in the bottom right table here, we called an early position raiser. We went multi-way to the flop. With King Queen offsuit, we flop top pair, which is more than likely going to be the best hand. We're going to check to the raiser. We're going to see what he does, and then we're going to respond accordingly. It's pretty unlikely to see a scenario occurring here where we're folding our hand though. If the pre-flop raiser raises and the other opponent in the hand also if he bets rather should I say, and FN89 over here raises, then we may find a fold, but as it stands we're just going to be check calling. More than likely if Alex Sasso has us beat here, we're probably going to be doubling him up realistically, but I think we're going to have the best hand here enough that it's going to be fine just to call down. I don't love the 10, but I don't hate it either. It does give us a gut shot, so we get some extra equity that way. So it just goes check check on the river, and we are indeed good, which is fine by me. Betting river there wouldn't have been crazy, but I think generally speaking, if we put out a bet, we're going to be folding out too much of his range there. We are going to have the best hand there fairly often, and we want to maximize his potential to bluff if he is that sort of player that's going to be bluffing on 3 streets. So I'm absolutely fine with our line there of just planning on check calling. We will be keeping an eye out for see what sort of hands that he gets to showdown with though, for sure. So it's always good to be able to get a feel for how players are playing. Especially at the regular tables, where obviously you're going to be playing with the same people over a decent number of hands. So as long as he sticks around, of course. I mean, obviously he can leave at any stage, but it's always beneficial to get a kind of feel for how people are playing in those kinds of spots, what sort of hands that they're double barreling with, what kind of hands they're triple barreling with, and so on. And I think we're just going to make a somewhat tight fold with the ace-4 suited up in the top right table. Calling, I don't mind any of our options there. We can fold, we can call, and we can use it as a 3-bet bluff. I think I'm going to be folding those types of hands, especially versus the pot-sized open. If it was a smaller open, we can definitely 3-betting and calling becomes a more viable option. But versus the 35-cent open, I think we can just go ahead and stick it in the muck happily enough. Ace-king suited on the bottom right table. We're unlikely to be folding here for sure. We're going to start it off just with a min raise, which is our standard opening size from the button. So my general plan of action on these boards, if we're heads up, is to check it back. The nut no pair is going to be good fairly often. When it is multi-way though, this may change. I think I may put out a small stab at this. We get donked into anyway, so I think we're just going to go ahead and fold. When he does this into 3 people, or into 2 people, should I say, he should have some sort of, at least a middling strength hand, and it's pretty unlikely with this stack size that we're going to be able to get him to fold a lot of his hands like 9x on later streets, given that he only has 36 big blinds left behind. So I think we're just going to go ahead and fold and not be overly sad about it. Queen 5 under the gun is going to be a fold. We are happy just to be checking the 4-6 offsuit. We have absolutely no showdown value. We're not planning on making a play at this pot at any point. Although that run out isn't actually absurd to start betting on now, to be perfectly honest. If Ballybat checks to us, I may put in a small 2 big blind bet, maybe 20 cents, seems about right. We can obviously have an absolute ton of 10x here, so I think we're going to get a decent amount of respect here with this bet, which we do. It's very difficult for them to have a hand that can call us with unless they have, as I said, 10x, in which case obviously we're never getting fold. But a lot of their single pair and even their 2-pair combos, sets and so on will have a hard time calling there, and I mean the chances of them having those types of hands are very slim given the way that the hand played out, so I think that bet is going to turn out to be fairly profitable. And obviously the pot was very small, so it's impossible that it can be that profitable, but you need to be looking at maximizing your equity in every single opportunity that presents itself that you think is going to be plus EV. So as I said, while we only won a couple of big blinds there, it's still better than losing it, right? So ace-10 on the bottom left table, we will likely be 3-betting this hand, I feel. And 9-10 up on the top right, we're getting 5.5 to 1 on our money. I think I'm just going to go ahead and click call here. So now that the squeezer's come along, let's see an even better opportunity. So we're going to be putting in the squeeze play to 140. Start putting the pressure on. And ideally we can just take this down pre-flop, which would be an absolutely fine result for me. But if we do go post-flop, there are a decent number of boards that we can attack as well. So we get through the initial raiser, which is the toughest person to get through generally in those spots, and then maximum allure follows suit with the fold behind, which is nice. 10-jack suited is going to play well enough, even versus the short stacker, that we can just call a raise. He limps though. His stack size makes this a little bit more awkward. Generally speaking, people limping from the button, I'm going to be raising this type of hand for sure against them, but versus that stack size of only 400 BB, or 40 BB should I say, it becomes a little bit trickier. I think I'm fine. I think it's playable enough that we can just complete and see a multi-way flop, rather than raising and likely having to play a blow the pot out of position with very little idea of what kind of range that he would be limp calling with. When he min bets here, he's not showing much strength obviously, but I think trying to make a play here would be a small blunder. It can't be that bad putting in a bluff raise there, but in general I think he's going to have a hand that he's going to be continuing with on later streets. We'll see though, he gets a little bit of action, so we will see. He min bets again. One thing I've noticed a lot of people doing at the micro stakes is this weird sort of min bet, and then just putting a large bet in on the river, that sort of line. So We don't get to see what he does in the river, but I have noticed people do that fairly often. Seems like a bizarre line to me. I think if you're going to be betting on earlier streets, you should just be going normal sizings for both value and for bluffs for sure. The min bet, it reduces your fold equity when you're bluffing, and it also reduces your it also reduces the value that you're getting from when you do actually have a hand there. So I mean, if he has a hand like ace x, which isn't impossible there, he's just losing so much value from any hands that may be able to call him with. Pocket twos, we're just going to go ahead and see a flop. 3-betting here again, it wouldn't be crazy, but I think I'm fine just calling, seeing a flop, trying to flop a set and win some stacks. One of the better boards for us that doesn't contain a 2, it's paired, which means it's harder for them to have connected with it. I think I'm going to just fire out a half pot bet here, and we're going to be 3-betting the ace queen over on the bottom left table. So we get called, and we get called quite quickly. We're just going to be checking back here. It's possible he may have some missed hearts potentially, but in general, we're just going to be check folding here. We're never considering putting more money in. I don't mind our small stab on the turn. I think it's going to be marginally better than just checking, because if we checking, we're essentially completely giving up all claim to the pot. So we flop the absolute stone cold nuts on the bottom left table in a 3-bet pot multi-way, which is the dream. So what we're going to do is we're going to bet about 160 here. So if Malone rejams, then we have the option of re-raising if we so wish. The queen is an awful card for us for several reasons. It's obviously going to be much more likely that we're chopping now, which is upsetting. And also, we've timed out by mistake. And also, when we are ahead, it's going to be much more difficult to get value. So this queen is an absolutely horrendous card, but it's still, obviously, we still have the nuts. It can't be that bad. It's fine. I'm going to assume that we're going to be chopping with F4, FN, 89 here pretty much always. And we chop up the short stacks of money, which is fine by me. But obviously, oh wow, and he had the heart draw to go along with it as well, so he had the nuts with a redraw to more nuts. If we had lost that hand after flopping the nuts straight, I would have been quite sad. But hey, these things happen. So we pick up a second pair here on the turn. It's pretty unlikely that we're beat here. I don't think there's much value in raising those, so we're just going to go ahead and call. So we are indeed good. I think if we raise there, it's pretty unlikely he was calling with his pair of 5s there, I feel. So raising, while I was fairly confident we had the best hand, raising doesn't really seem to accomplish much to me, so I think I'm fine just calling it down. Interesting to note on that bottom left table that Malone got it in there with the worst straight on the board, and he called with 9-7 there on that flop, which I believe was a gut shot to the nut low straight. So we're gonna be looking to get involved in pots with him for sure. And we've got a 3 and a 4 and a 5 betting war going on here. So he gets the pocket 9s in versus pocket aces, further enforcing our belief that he is possibly going to be one of the weaker players at the table. So we're gonna, as I said, be going out of our way to be looking to get involved in pots with him for sure. So we have ace 10, which is going to be good somewhat often on this board on the bottom right table. We're going to start off with a call if he bets, and I think we're just happy to check this back. We're flopping some reasonable hands today. We flop the flush with an open end, just a straight flush draw. There's a lot of cards, well, there's a decent number of cards that can kill our action here on this board, so we're just going to be check raising and looking to get the money in as soon as possible. So we get called, which is great news for us. Obviously, it's possible that he has a better flush. It's not all that likely, though, of course. So we're going to be betting again here, and we're going to be looking to jam the river. I don't love that this board is paired, but I think if he had flopped a set, I think there's a pretty decent chance that he was going to be just looking to get the money in on this flop. So I'm still just going to go ahead and jam for value here. So he has the second nut straight there, the second nut flush there. So we are indeed beat, but I don't think you can be that upset about these things. Coolers will happen in poker for sure. And when you flop a flush and your opponent flops a flush, there's just one of those situations where you are destined to lose money. So as I said, we're not going to feel too bad about that. And I've definitely seen people make absurd call downs on those kinds of boards with kind of singular overpairs, pocket jacks, pocket queens, 10x, those types of hands. Some people just really overvalue overpairs and top pair type hands, so I have absolutely no regrets at all about jamming there for value. It's interesting that he didn't look to get the money in himself earlier though, which feels like with the amount of strength I've shown there, I think he can be definitely just getting king deuce in there, the second nuts in for sure. But as I said, those kinds of spots aren't the ones that you really need to be too worried about, because they're all going to balance out in the long run. I mean, if the situations were reversed, I'm going to assume that he was going to be losing all of his money to me. So what you want to be looking at is the spots where there is something that you can do about it, where you can play a hand better than your opponent would if the situations were reversed. That's where all of your profit will come from poker, because at the end of the day, the luck element of poker, that'll all balance out in the long run. So you want to be looking at the spots where you can improve and where you can play better than your opponent can in the same situations if the cards were reversed. That's generally speaking the way you should be looking at it. So ace-3 is, we open any suited ace from any position, so ace-3 suited from mid position is absolutely going to be fine. And over on the bottom left table, so we have flopped second pair, and we have a gut shot to go along with it. There are a lot of cards that I don't want to see in the turn here, so I think I'm happy enough just to go ahead and bet this for some value as well as for protection. There's going to be a huge amount of cards where I'm not sure how to respond on the turn, so if we do just take that down on the flop there and then, it's an absolutely fine result. And there are some worse hands that he can be calling with as well. We're going to put in a squeeze play here with the king 10. And we are going to see a flop with the 7-8 suited. So we flop a gut shot, and we have the backdoor spade draw as well. And it's a pretty difficult board for him to have connected with. So I'm going to start off actually with a check raise here with our weak draw. I don't really want to check call. Check folding seems too weak. And I think, as I said, I just think he's going to have missed this board enough that we can go ahead and check raise it, or check raise bluff here fairly successfully. And if he does flat call, we do always have outs to improve to the nuts. Any spade is great for us, and obviously any 6 is also fantastic. But we got it through, which is obviously the best case scenario. I feel like I should have bet this at some point earlier. I'm going to fire in a bet now to fold out his ace highs, basically. He rivers a pair of 4s, which is unfortunate, but again, we're not going to be too upset. So over on the top right table, we check called with top pair. We've picked up a flush draw, albeit a weak one. I think we're going to be good enough to check again, check call again, especially this sizing. And on the bottom left table, we 3-bet our ace jack suited. We get 4-bet, which is extremely upsetting. Despite the very good price we're getting here, I'm going to assume that this is going to be we're going to be in a lot of trouble here very often. So I'm just going to go ahead and fold. And ace queen offsuit here, we are going to flat call and see a flop. Top right table, I'm at a bit of a loss here now on this ace. If he bets again, I think we're just going to fold. He bets very, very small. So it's just a case, are we going to be good here 1 in 4 times? This is a bit of a tough spot. Just his sizing just stinks of value to me. I'm going to click call, more so out of curiosity than anything else. So he has the flush, which it doesn't surprise me at all. It's possible that that was potentially a bad call. I mean, it's never going to be atrocious getting that price with any pair, but it seems like I could have played that better. But as I said, I kind of wanted to see what he has there, because hopefully he's going to be at the table for a little while. I'll have a better idea how to deal with those situations if they do arise again, and what kind of sizing he chooses. So I really don't like his sizing there. I mean, obviously he maximized his value against my exact holding, but against a lot of my kind of random ace-x, which I can definitely show up with there, he is losing a significant amount of value at that sizing. So we flop top, we bet it, and we take it down on the bottom right table, which wasn't the desired result. Obviously we would have not minded a call there by any stretch, but it's not a horrible result either. Despite a reasonable hand that we have, it's still fairly vulnerable, and there are a decent number of hands that can be out there that beat us as well, so definitely not a horrendous result. Ace King, we're just going to be checking it down. We don't love this board at all. I'm going to be happy to check this down to get it to showdown as cheaply as possible. It definitely has some decent amounts of showdown value for sure, and we are going to go ahead and click call. So he has the Queen Jack high, so we induced the bluff on the river by checking it down. As I said, I don't think folding there is really an option with the nut no pair. Queen 10 suited, we were going to bring it in for an open. When it's potted before us, we're just going to go ahead and fold. Again, that's the type of hand where we can for sure look at using it as a 3-bet bluffing hand in a lot of spots, but to do that with that sort of hand, I feel that we would need a little bit more information on the players. So at the moment we're playing relatively readless. We've seen a few hands get to showdown and so on. We have some reads on a couple of the players, but for the most part at all the tables we are relatively readless. So we're just going to be playing a fairly straightforward ABC poker for the most part. And as I said, just picking our spots as best as we can. That's my general plan of action so far anyway. When we are playing hands though, as I said, obviously we're going to want to be coming out raising as much as possible. Playing it as aggressively as we think we can. So pocket 8s for sure, we're going to be opening under the gun. Deuce Jack is not going to be good enough though, unfortunately. So I'm just having a look around the tables, seeing who we have at multiple tables, because it seems like we're going to have a few people on multiple tables for sure. We have Maximum Allure on the bottom left and the bottom right. We have FRN on the bottom left and the top right. So we're going to assume people playing multiple tables are probably going to be, on average, slightly better than the people that are just single tabling. Pocket 8s here, we're just going to fire out a bet here for some value against flush draws, those types of hands, as well as some random floats they might have with overcards, and as well as for some protection. We don't want to just check back, have a card hit that we don't know how to respond to. 8-9 suited on the button on the bottom left table, we're going to click call. It's unfortunate that this guy is a shorter stack. We definitely would prefer to be playing this against a full stacker, but it's going to be okay, I think. The pot goes multi-way and we flop a weak top pair, so we'd likely have the best hand here, but it's not going to be a hand that we're going to be going nuts looking to get stacks in by any stretch. We are going to have a bet though if it's checked to us rather. And ace queen, or ace king rather should I say, in the top left table we're going to be using as a 3-bet. Versus this pot sizing, in a multi-way pot I actually think I might just make a tight fold. I think we're going to be in trouble here fairly frequently versus overpair type hands, and because the board is paired, if he does have an overpair, we're drawing just to an 8. So we're going to be in rough shape there fairly often, and with that sizing, it just seems unlikely that he's going to be doing that as a bluff. Versus to the 138, we're getting a stupidly good price with ace kings. We have 2 overcards and we have a gut shot to the nuts. We're going to click call, but we're not happy about this board at all. So he has ace deuce, we have 1 overcard and our gut shot, which is still live, and we hit our gut shot, which is nice. I just think we're getting way too good a price there to consider folding. Obviously I wasn't expecting the ace king to be ahead very often, but all we need there was about 20% equity from what I think, so I think ace king there is definitely going to have 20% equity against his overall range in general. Uh, 9-3 on the button. We do open the button very, very wide, but this is not going to be good enough. So fortunately we get there. I'm sure that player is a little bit upset about that ace-king hand, but I don't really like his line there with the ace-deuce. Like he called the original raise, he called the large re-raise pre-flop, so the majority of his money went in when he was dominated, and that's going to be happening very, very frequently with that type of scenario. And then jamming the ace-deuce there on the jack-queen-deuce board just doesn't seem like it's going to be a winning play to me. And obviously there he got called by worse, just what he wanted, but usually when he gets called there he is going to be behind. And obviously I'm never folding any queen or any jack there either. So the jack high board on the bottom left table is pretty disconnected, pretty tough for them to have. We block a decent number of their jack X hands as well, so we're going to go ahead, we're going to fire out here. Ideally we want to get at least magic hand to fold. The short stacker that we have position on, if he calls, it's not the end of the world. We bink our queen, which is fine by me, so we're going to go ahead, we're going to bet again, this time for value rather than a bluff. If he has a hand like 10 jack or so on, he may call again. We get re-raised, which doesn't fill me with joy by any stretch. We're going to go ahead and call. Queen doesn't really change anything. If we have the best hand on the turn, we have the best hand anyway, and we're never folding. I'm not very excited about this at all, though. So yeah, he has ace queen. That doesn't shock me. A bit of a gross run out for us, but I mean, as I said, we're never planning on folding there. I wasn't expecting to be beat by a hand by like ace queen. I think if I was beat there, I was expecting it to be by a flopped set that slow played the flop. And there's obviously not a huge amount of combos there of those, or a hand maybe like queen jack would make some sense there as well. But obviously, when the second queen rolled out on the river, it's less likely that he has a hand like that. So we've lost a little bit of money on the bottom left table. We're up about a stack on the top left, and on the two tables on the right, we're about break even. So overall, we're probably down a little bit so far this session, but by no significant margin, I don't think. Ace 8 is going to be a fold. And queen 3, we weren't planning on really defending that unless the small blind made it quite small. If he min-raised, for example, we're pretty much priced in to call with any 2. If he had made any sort of reasonable steal attempt, though, the queen 3 wasn't going to be good enough to defend, I don't think. 4-7 offsuit, we're going to go ahead and fold it happily enough. Queen deuce offsuit, we're never defending unless it's to a min raise from Kyle. Again, it's just one of those hands. It's going to play absolutely horrendously. If he does min raise, we're getting 3.5 to 1 on our money, so we can't really consider folding any cards with that price when we have position. But against anything above a min raise, it's going to be a very, very straightforward fold. Ace 10 from the button is obviously going to be a very, very, very easy open. I would be raising ace 10 offsuit from any position, so from the button it's absolutely fine. Ace 6 as well, any ace in the button we're going to be raising when it's folded to us. So F or Fn, 3 bets. Let's see, 3 bets is reasonably large. Oh, and we get called as well. I think I'm just going to stick the ace 10 them up here. I think we're going to be dominated very often, and it's going to be reasonably tricky to play even when we have position. So we're going to happy to let F or Fn and M Gambler Babe battle it out. 10 is a pretty good card for us. It counterfeits all of his underpairs. Ace high is going to be good here, an absolute ton. So we're just going to be checking back, looking to induce bluffs. We don't, but I don't think there's any value in betting here. It's optimistic to think we can get called by king high there. So I'm happy just to take our showdown value. Maybe sticking out a min bet there to try to induce some bluff raises might not be absurd. But I think I'm fine just checking it back. Ace 5 here, we're never going to be able to get 3 streets of value here from worse. So I'm going to check this back. This serves 2 purposes. It'll induce some bluffs and it'll make him more likely to pay us off on the turn. And it also gives him some chance to catch up. If he has a hand, for example, like queen jack there and he had a jack, he may be tempted to call a bet. Whereas he's obviously going to be folding a hand like queen jack or anything like that there on the flop without a shadow of a doubt. But unfortunately, our slow play on the flop doesn't get us any extra money. And we've been getting dealt a lot of rags in the big blind today, but we've been getting a decent number of walks, so let's hope that will continue, which it does. That's 3 or 4 walks in a row now that we've had with raggedy holdings in the big blind, so if we can keep that trend going, we'll be very, very happy. 5-9 suited blind versus blind, we're just going to be folding. F or Fn looks like one of the more reasonable players based on his play so far, so opening a hand like that against him is probably going to be a losing proposition. There are some people for sure that we can be opening against, and we can be opening 100% against some people that are just overfolding to an absurd degree. But against somebody who you think is going to be one of the stronger players, opening a hand like a 9-5 suited is going to be a mistake. Blind versus blind, I think. And the top left table, we have backdoor hearts and we have a gut shot. So we're going to start off with potentially a check call. Maybe not now. When he pots it, I'm not thrilled about it. Obviously, when it goes back call, there's definitely going to be some flush draws and so on that are possible. We get teased with the 10 on the turn, so we would have had the absolute stone cold nuts. But as I said, I think that call would not be great. We still would have had pretty much the nuts on this run out. Obviously King Jack beats us, but that's not all that likely. And there's a decent enough chance of a chop on that run out as well, so we're not too upset about folding our hand there. As I said, if the razor had made it half pot to 2/3 pot, I think we can definitely peel once there with our backdoor equity to go along with our gut shot. But versus the pot size opening, especially with when the guy calls as well, he's going to have a decent number of Queen X, obviously, but he's also going to show us some flush draws and so on there as well. And if he has a flush draw, our hand is in a lot of trouble. He takes one of our outs, and if we do hit a straight where it also completes his flush, we're going to be losing a very substantial pot as well. So the reverse implied odds against that type of hand are pretty immense. So this is something I need to get used to on the regular tables. Up at the top right there, the guy had to post his blind, so he had to post the small blind and the big blind. So I saw that he had raised it. I thought he had raised to 15 cent. So I was wondering, was he just a short stacker all in? I got very confused then when I saw he had €10 behind. But I forgot though, yeah, when you sit back in after sitting out for a while, you need to post the 2 blinds. Normally when I'm playing, I play primarily on the fast fold tables, but I do play some regular tables as well. Actually, 8-7 off, we can probably open here. Something I try to avoid doing as much as I can is using the fold button, the pre-fold buttons, because there's some hands you look at them and they seem trashy, but then you realise if it's folded around to you, 7-8 offsuit is probably good enough to use as a button steal. King 9 suited over on the top left table. We are going to be bringing that in for a raise if it's folded to us. When it's raised but under the gun, we're just going to muck it ourselves. And 9-10 suited on the bottom left table, though, has a little bit more potential. We're more likely to play a hand like this because it suffers from less domination issues. And we're definitely going to be bringing in for a raise again if it's folded to us, and we will consider calling a raise with it as well. King 8 in the big blind, we're not ecstatic about that by any stretch. We're probably just going to be folding here. Versus the mid position opener, yeah, we're just going to go ahead and throw it in the muck. It's not going to flop well enough, often enough to turn a profit, I feel. Although that flop would have been one of the better ones for us, giving us we have an overcard at the board, which would have also been a draw to the second up flush draw. And I would probably be betting on this turn if I was still involved here. Nobody has shown much interest at all in this pot. Naga 1 Nash shouldn't have much 9x at all, so I think if we just donked out in the turn here, it would have been fairly successful. I stand corrected though, as Kyle sticks around. Interesting lead by Kyle. I'm not sure what I make of this. Nice hand, whatever he had. I'm not sure if I love that lead though. If he's bluffing a missed flush draw, that if he check called with the turn flush draw, then I do like it. But if he has any sort of value there, I think he should definitely be checking and trying to induce more bluffs from Naga 1. I think Naga 1's range there is going to be fairly weak in general, so if he is bluffing, I love it. If he had any sort of value, I hate it, basically. So it really depends on what his holding was to assess that play. The ace-5 suited here, I think we can actually click call here. It sucks being out of position, but we're happy enough to go. There's a very decent chance this is going to go on a large multi-way pot here, so a suited ace here in a large multi-way pot I think is going to play quite well in general. We flop a gut shot. It's a shame that the 9 and the 4 are the spades and not the clubs. Obviously, if we had a gut shot and a flush draw, we would be ecstatic. Gut shot is not going to be strong enough to continue here, though, I'm afraid, when this guy chooses this sizing. So he gets check raised and he snap folds. Wow, that's very interesting. I would have expected him to have a decent chunk of overpairs that are at least considering before they fold there. I'm pretty surprised just to see the snap fold. And so 0C over in the top right table is seeming like he might be one of the more aggressive players for sure after that hand. So we're going to be keeping an eye on him. I think he is fairly new to the table, so we're going to be keeping an eye out for sure, getting a bit of better feel for how he's playing, and then react accordingly. Large hand over in the top left. I didn't really see the action over there with the pocket aces. I just saw the showdown, and pocket aces were good, as they will be fairly often. The suited ace again from the mid position, we're for sure going to be opening it. Even if the mid position, or if under the gun had opened there himself, we would have considered using it as a 3-bet bluff. Queen 3 suited is not going to be good enough to continue, so we're just going to stick it where it belongs, in the muck. So we get 2 callers, and the board is pretty well connected. I think this is going to have connected with the range quite well. I don't think we're going to be taking a stab at this at any point. It seems like it's just going to be spewing chips to me. So it goes back call, so as I said, the chances of us getting a bet through on the flop are pretty slim. It goes check check, and ace 9 is good. That's interesting. Pretty surprised he calls with ace 9 there. Seems light, but he was correct obviously, so can't argue with results when he makes a read like that. But without information, unless he has a bit of history with Super Mega Mix there, I think that call is going to be a loser in the long run. And obviously with the history he has with Mega Mix, if he does have any, that he knows that he will bluff in those spots fairly liberally. We're happy just to see a flop here with the pocket 5s. We get re-raised, which is upsetting. I would actually consider calling here just because we're so deep here. We're not getting a fantastic price. Generally speaking, my rule of thumb would be I would be looking for 20-1 implied odds, but in a pot like this where it's already quite large, I don't think we need as good an implied odds price because the chances of stacking him are much higher. So I don't think we need to hit a set as often. We're strictly set mining there. We're happy enough just to go ahead and muck it straight away when we do brick. But as I said, if we do hit a 5 there, I think we're going to be able to stack him with a fair amount of frequency. So I don't think we need quite as good an implied odds price. So I think we're getting about 15-1 there, thereabouts. Queen King of suit here is going to be good for a 3-bet on the bottom right table. And the fact that we had, with the pocket 5s hand in the top left, I believe that we had positioned that hand. The fact that we have position there makes a huge difference, of course. It's much easier to play low pocket pairs in position rather than out of position. It's much easier to maximize your value and also just to pick up pots on favourable runouts where you haven't improved to a set where your opponent has shown a lot of weakness as well. So being in position there definitely had an impact on my decision for sure. The King Jack off suit we are more than likely going to be playing. Even if it's raised from an early position, we're probably going to bring it in for versus Super Mega Mix. This guy has been limping quite a lot. We're definitely going to be ISOing against him. So we can make it 4 to 5x there, and that's going to be fine. And we're going to be betting a huge amount of flops then, and hoping it just goes check fold. Unless we hit a strong hand, of course. A7 suited on the bottom left table. Again, that's going to be an open. If it's raised before us, we may see a flop. Again, it sort of sucks that the under the gun opener here isn't a full stacker, but I think he is deep enough that we can probably go ahead and click call here. No, maybe not. If he was up to maybe $7 or $8, I think then we'd be in calling territory. But for the 60 BBs, I think it's going to be a fold. That would be if I had continued, that would be a board I'd be attacking that weak looking half pot bet for sure though. So I like F4 FN's raise here for sure. So let's see if it gets through. It's looking like it anyway. When someone starts tanking like that, usually they're just going to go ahead and fold. They just want to make it look like they have a decision. It's pretty rare that someone actually has a decision here. Because what kind of hand can you have that actually has a genuine decision? I mean, if he has an overpair, he's just going to get the money in. If he has no pair, he's probably just going to be folding. So we're just going to check here the ace-4. Again, it's just one of those spots where we're never going to be able to get called 3 streets by worse. So we're going to check back, look to induce, and look to give him some rope. We're not going to be thrilled if he triple barrels into us. And this run out actually isn't all that good for us. There's going to be a decent number of 2-pair combos and so on that are possible. So we're just going to be check calling again here. And when it goes check check, we expect it to be good pretty much always. As I said, betting out there can create a lot of tricky spots, and I think it's going to be pretty difficult to get called by worse there that often. So I'm fine taking the slightly more passive line and just looking to get the hand to showdown. Queen 9 suited under the gun, we can consider opening it, but it's definitely going to be very borderline. We're only 5-handed here, so under the gun is essentially mid position at a standard 6 max table. I think it's going to be fine just folding it. It's not going to be a big winner, and it's not going to be a big loser no matter what you do with it. So if some people do opt to raise it, I don't think it's going to be much of a mistake, if at all. And it might even be marginally profitable, but it's definitely going to be very, very close. We're just going to fold the 4s out of position again. When we're out of position here, it's going to be very, very tricky to play this. And to maximize our value, if we do improve to a 3 of a kind type hand. So it does feel a little bit nitty, but I think it's going to be better than calling out of position. Pocket 6s though, when we have the button, we will more than likely be playing, barring a raise and a 3-bet before. The ace-4 here, I think we're just going to fire at this board. It's just one of those hands where it's pretty difficult for Kyle to have connected that strongly with it. And I mean, obviously a lot of the hands that we're folding out we're ahead of anyway, but that's not necessarily a horrible result when we have a weak ace-high, and we're not going to feel comfortable calling down on many runouts. So I think just putting out the small bet there, trying to take it down on the flop is going to be absolutely fine. Pocket 6s here, we're just betting our hand for a little bit of protection. If he raises, we're going to have a decision to make, because he has shown to be one of the more aggressive players. The king is a pretty good card for us to barrel here, I think. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to up our sizing a little bit as well. We get that fold through, so I wouldn't be shocked if he folded out some hand like 7x or possibly even 9x if he's particularly tight. Bottom left table, we flop a flush. We don't want to be just calling this tiny bet. We want to be building the pot as much as we can here. So we're going to be putting in a small raise. Unfortunately, it's just some snap folds though. Obviously, would have much rather a bigger pot than what we just won, but just flat calling there. I think if he had made it a reasonable sizing, if he had gone kind of somewhere between half pot and 3/4 pot, calling becomes a much more valuable option. But when he's just throwing out that weak 20-cent bet, I don't really like just flat calling, because the pot isn't going to be big enough by the turn and river to make it a really substantial pot. So we need to be putting in the small raise ourselves when we have a hand as strong as the second nut flush. There's also, if he does have a hand like, say, an overpair, for example, or some 8x, those types of things, there are, if a 4th club comes along, or a 4th, yeah, it was clubs, if a 4th club comes along, A, it reduces the value of our hand quite significantly, and B, it makes it much more difficult to get value from those types of hands as well. Now, so we are going to be wrapping up this session there now fairly soon. Ace Queen over here is probably going to be our last hand. We're going to call it a day then, and I will be back again soon for part 4. I hope you guys have enjoyed it. As always, if you have any questions, comments, anything like that at all, make sure to leave them either on YouTube or on Poker VIP. I do check them quite regularly, so I will get back to you if you have any questions about specific spots that arose. I hope you enjoyed it, guys. Take care, and I'll see you again soon for part 4.